Dr. Jaiwan Park stared at her computer screen in her small office at the Seoul Institute of Science. The numbers made sense, but she couldn't believe what they meant. She had checked her math 20 times. She had even asked the computer to run the calculations again and again. The answer stayed the same. This can't be right, she said to herself, pushing her glasses up her nose. The coffee cup next to her computer had gone cold hours ago. Outside her window, the sun was rising over the city. She had worked all night again. Just then, her office door flew open. Her research partner, Sang-Min Lee, rushed in with his lab coat flying behind him. Ji-won, turn on the news. Now. Ji-won clicked open her browser and found the live news feed. Her eyes went wide. Above every major city on Earth, large silver ships hung in the sky. They weren't attacking. They were just waiting. First contact, Sang-min whispered. It's really happening. The next few hours were chaos. Government officials from all countries talked to the aliens. News reporters tried to get every detail they could. And through it all, Ji-won couldn't stop thinking about her calculations. 3 days later, she sat in a large meeting room with other top scientists from around the world. At the front of the room stood a tall, well-dressed Korean man who had introduced himself as Suho Kim. He looked human in every way, which had surprised everyone at first. "We are the Galactic Council," Suho said, speaking perfect English. "We watch over all spacefaring civilizations. We help them grow and join our community among the stars." He smiled warmly. "We have been watching Earth for a long time. Now, you are ready for our help." Dr. Park raised her hand. She couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Mr. Kim, what method do you use for faster-than-light travel?" Suho's smile got bigger. "Ah, that is very advanced technology. It took our scientists thousands of years to develop safe FTL travel. We will teach you, but it will take time. Many years of careful study." "But what if we already found a way?" Ji-won asked. The room went quiet. Suho's smile dropped for just a second before coming back. "That's not possible. The physics are very complex. You would need quantum rubber banding," Ji-won said, standing up. She walked to the front of the room and grabbed a marker. On the whiteboard, she started writing equations. "We don't bend space. We don't make wormholes. We make the universe snap." Suho's face went pale as he read her math. This is. "It works," Ji-won said. "At least on paper. We just need to test it." "No," Suho said quickly. "Too quickly. This is very dangerous. Very wrong. The Council has rules about FTL development. Safety protocols. This method you suggest, it's like snapping a rubber band made of space itself." "Exactly," Ji-won said, smiling. "That's why it will work." The other scientists in the room had gathered around the whiteboard. They were checking her math, talking excitedly among themselves. Suho watched them with growing worry on his face. He pulled out a small device and spoke into it quickly in another language. Minutes later, another person entered the room. This one was introduced as Tae Lee, the Council's lead scientist. Tae looked at Ji-won's equations. His eyes got wider and wider. He turned to Suho and said something that made the ambassador look sick. "The math is correct," Tae announced to the room. "But this method, it goes against everything we know about safe space travel. The Council will need to discuss this." "How long will that take?" Ji-won asked. "Several months, at least," Suho said quickly. "We must be careful with new technologies." Ji-won looked at Sang-min across the room. He nodded slightly. They both knew what the other was thinking. The prototype was already half-built in their lab. They hadn't waited for alien approval to start testing their ideas. "Of course," Ji-won said politely. "We understand the need for caution." As the aliens left the room, Sang-min came to stand next to her at the whiteboard. "They're scared," he whispered. "Yes," Ji-won said, erasing her equations. "But they haven't seen anything yet." In orbit above Earth, Suho and Tai he sat in their ship, writing urgent messages to the Galactic Council. Humans, it seemed, were going to be much more trouble than anyone had expected. 1 month after the first contact, the Galactic Council sent their best scientists to Earth. They wanted to show humans the proper way to travel through space. They set up a meeting at the Seoul Institute of Science. Tahi Lee stood at the front of the conference room. Behind him, a large screen showed complicated diagrams of the Council's FTL drive. The room was full of Earth's top scientists, including Dr. Jae-won Park and her team. "Our method is very safe," Tahi explained. "We carefully fold space, like making a paper airplane. It takes a lot of energy, but it never breaks the rules of physics." He looked directly at Jae-won. "Never." Jae-won raised her hand. "How much energy does it take to move one small ship?" Tahi thought for a moment. "The same power as all of Earth uses in 1 year." The room filled with whispers. That was too much energy. Earth couldn't afford to use that method. "Our way is different," Jae-won said, standing up. "May I show them, Mr. Lee?" Tahi didn't want to say yes, but he had to. The council had promised to share knowledge freely. He stepped aside. Jae-won walked to the front. She picked up a rubber band from the table. "The council's way is like building a smooth road through space," she said. "Our way is like this." She stretched the rubber band between her hands. "We use quantum entanglement to connect 2 points in space." She let one end of the rubber band go. It snapped forward with a sharp sound. "Then we let physics do the work for us." "That's impossible," one of the council scientists said. "The energy needed to entangle space itself is much less than you think." Jae-won interrupted. She wrote a new equation on the board. "We don't need to entangle all of space. We just need to entangle a thin line, like a thread through fabric." Tahi stared at her math. His hands started to shake. "This would pull a ship apart," he said. "The forces involved are managed by our quantum stabilizers," said Mi-suk Kang, one of Jae-won's engineers. She stood up and joined Jae-won at the front. "We've already built a working prototype of the stabilizer. Would you like to see it?" The council scientists looked at each other with worry. They hadn't expected humans to move this fast. "A prototype?" Tahi asked. "Already." "Follow us," Mi-suk said. They walked to the Institute's lab. In the center sat a large metal ring filled with glowing blue light. Hyun-woo Choi, another engineer, was checking readings on a computer. "This is what keeps the ship stable during the snap," Mi-suk explained. "The quantum field protects everything inside from the forces of space-time." Tahi walked around the ring slowly. "This technology, it's like giving a child a fusion reactor," he said. "You don't understand how dangerous it is." "We understand perfectly," Jae-won said. "We've done all the math. We've run all the simulations. It works." "Theory is not reality," Tahi said firmly. "The council spent thousands of years perfecting safe FTL travel. You cannot rush this process." Just then, Suho Kim burst into the lab. "The council has made its decision," he announced. "All human FTL research must stop immediately, for your own safety." The room went quiet. Jae-won looked at her team. They had expected this. "We respect the council's decision," Jae-won said carefully. "But we will continue our research. Earth needs this technology. We can't wait thousands of years." Suho's face turned red. "This is not a request. This is an order from the Galactic Council." "Earth is not part of your council yet," Jae-won reminded him. "We make our own decisions." "Then you leave us no choice," Suho said. He spoke into his communication device. "All council scientists will leave Earth immediately. You will receive no more help from us until you agree to follow proper procedures." As the aliens left the lab, Mi-suk turned to Jae-won. "What now?" Jae-won watched the council members leave. Then she smiled. Now we finish what we started. Prepare the prototype for its first real test." In their ship above Earth, Tahi looked down at the blue planet with real fear. "They're going to do it anyway," he said to Suho. "They're going to snap the fabric of space like it's a child's toy." "May the Ancient Ones help us all," Suho replied, "because the humans certainly won't help themselves." 2 months passed after the Council scientists left Earth. In a secure facility beneath the Seoul Institute of Science, Dr. Ji-won Park and her team worked without stopping. They had built their first test ship, a small craft no bigger than a car. "All systems are ready," Mai Suk-kang announced, checking the final readings on her computer. The test ship sat in the center of a large room, surrounded by sensors and safety equipment. The quantum stabilizer ring glowed with bright blue light around the ship's middle section. "The Council is watching us," Hyun-woo Choi said, looking at a radar screen. 3 of their ships just entered Earth orbit. Ji-won nodded. She had expected this. "Let them watch," she said. "Maybe they'll learn something." A loud alarm sounded through the facility. Security guards rushed into the test room. "Dr. Park," one of them said, "a council representative is demanding entry. He says he's here to observe." Ji-won looked at her team. They all nodded. "Let him in," she said. "He can see what humanity can do." Dong Kuk-yoon walked into the room wearing a perfectly pressed suit. He was the council's chief safety inspector, sent to document what they assumed would be a catastrophic failure. "Dr. Park," he said coldly, "the council strongly advises against this test. Your method violates 17 different safety protocols." "Thank you for your concern," Ji-won replied politely. "Would you like to review our safety measures?" Dong Kuk spent an hour checking their equipment and procedures. With each passing minute, his frown grew deeper. Finally, he stepped back. "Your safety measures are thorough," he admitted. "But this test is still extremely dangerous. The forces you plan to unleash will be controlled by our quantum stabilizers." Mai Suk interrupted. She pointed to her screens. "See these readings? The field is perfectly stable." Dong Kuk looked at the numbers. His eyes widened slightly. "These readings, they shouldn't be possible." "Many things we do shouldn't be possible," Ji-won said with a small smile. "Shall we begin the test?" The test ship would attempt to travel to the moon and back. A simple jump by their calculations. Inside the ship, they had placed sensors and a small plant in a pot. If anything went wrong, no one would get hurt. "Starting quantum entanglement," Hyun-woo announced. The air around the ship began to shimmer. "Target locked. Mare tranquillitatis." Dong Kuk stepped back, his face pale. "The energy readings are climbing too fast," he warned. "You must stop this now." "Energy levels normal," Mai Suk reported. "Quantum field is holding steady. Stabilizer at full power." Ji-won took a deep breath. "Begin snap sequence." The air crackled with invisible energy. The blue glow from the stabilizer ring grew brighter and brighter. Then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the ship vanished. Dong Kuk jumped. "Where did it go?" he demanded. "What have you done?" "Wait for it," Ji-won said calmly, watching the clock. 3 seconds later, another thunderclap shook the room. The ship reappeared exactly where it had started. Steam rose from its metal surface, but otherwise, it looked perfectly fine. Mai Suk rushed to check her readings. Ship structure intact, plant life signs normal. It worked. Hyun-woo pulled up images from the ship's cameras. They showed clear pictures of the lunar surface, then Earth, then the test room again. The entire round trip had taken less than 4 seconds. Dong Kuk stared at the ship in silence. His hand shook as he pulled out his communication device. "Council command," he said quietly. "The humans have done it. They've achieved controlled faster than light travel using their impossible method." Ji-won walked to the ship and opened its hatch. The small plant sat inside, its leaves gently swaying in the air conditioning. She picked it up and handed it to Dong Kuk. "Nothing is impossible," she said. "We just haven't figured out how to do it yet." High above Earth, the council ships recorded everything. Within hours, the news would reach every corner of the galaxy. Humans had found a new way to travel between the stars, and they had done it by breaking all the rules. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Hundreds of representatives from different worlds shouted and argued. At the center of the room, a hologram showed the human test ship disappearing and reappearing. Jin Ah Song stood at the speaker's podium. As the council's head of safety protocols, she had called this emergency meeting. "We must stop this immediately," she said, her voice carrying over the noise. "The humans are playing with forces they don't understand." Elder Du Yanquan rose from his seat. The old counselor moved slowly, but everyone fell silent when he spoke. And yet, he said calmly, "Their method works. Safety Inspector Yoon's report is very clear on this point." Dongkuk Yoon stood nervously beside the hologram. "Yes, Elder. The human quantum stabilizer contained the spatial forces perfectly. Their calculations were correct in every detail." "That's not possible," Jinnah insisted. "We have studied FTL travel for thousands of years. Our way is the only safe way." "Perhaps," Elder Du Yan said, stroking his chin, "we have become too certain of our own knowledge." The chamber grew quiet. Questioning the council's knowledge was rarely done, especially by an elder. "The humans completed their drive in 3 months," Du Yan continued. "Their method uses 1/10 of the energy our drives require. And their test ship made the journey in seconds, not hours." "But the risk," Jin Ah protested. "One failed quantum stabilizer could tear a hole in space itself. Our own drives could destroy entire solar systems if they fail," Du Yan reminded her. "Yet we trust our safety systems. The humans have built equally good safety systems, just different ones." Su Ho Kim stepped forward. Since his time on Earth, he had changed. He looked less certain now. "The humans will not stop," he told the council. "They see the universe differently than we do. Where we see danger, they see possibilities. Then we must force them to stop," Jinnah declared. "We can block their access to key materials, restrict their trade, isolate them until they agree to follow proper procedures. And if they refuse," Elder Du Yan asked softly, "if they build their ships anyway and go into space without our guidance?" The chamber fell silent again. Everyone knew that would be worse. Tahi Li, who had been quiet until now, stood up. "I have studied their quantum stabilizer design," he said. "It is elegant, beautiful, even. We would never have thought of it because we believed it was impossible." "You support this madness?" Jinnah asked in shock. "I support learning from it," Tahi replied. "The humans have shown us that our understanding of physics is incomplete. We can learn from them, or we can fear them, but we cannot stop them." Elder Du Yan nodded slowly. "The council exists to guide younger races, not control them. Perhaps it is time for us to learn something new." Jinnah looked around the chamber, seeing the mood shift. "You would risk the safety of the galaxy for human innovation." "No," Du Yan said. "I would expand our definition of safety to include new ideas. The humans have proven their method works. Now we must decide. Will we help them make it even safer, or will we force them to develop it alone?" The council members began to talk among themselves. Slowly, a consensus emerged. They would not stop the humans. Instead, they would work with them, learn from them, and try to guide their wild innovation into safer channels. As the meeting ended, Elder Du Yan approached Suho. "Return to Earth," he said. "Tell Dr. Park and her team that the council wishes to learn about their quantum stabilizer technology. Tell them we are ready to listen." Suho bowed deeply. "And what if they develop even more surprising technologies?" Du Yan smiled. "Then we will have many more interesting council meetings in our future." 2 weeks after the council's decision, the Seoul Institute of Science became very busy. Council scientists worked alongside human researchers, though they still seemed nervous about the quantum rubber band drive. Dr. Jae-won Park sat in her laboratory with Yoo Jin Shin, her quantum engineer. They were looking at new designs for a larger stabilizer ring. On the other side of the room, 3 council scientists watched with worried faces. If we increase the ring size by 30%, Yu Jin said, drawing on her tablet, we can fit a ship big enough for 10 people. The power requirements will increase, one council scientist said quickly. It might become unstable. Jaiwan looked at the calculations again. Actually, she said, the bigger ring is more stable. The quantum field has more space to spread out. The council scientists looked confused. One of them, an older man, stepped forward. Dr. Park, he said, may I ask you something? Why are you not afraid? Jaiwan put down her tablet. What do you mean? You are playing with the basic forces of the universe, he said. You stretch space like it is rubber. You snap it back like a child's toy. How can you be so calm about this? Before Jaiwan could answer, Sang-Min Lee walked into the lab carrying coffee for everyone. We are afraid, he said, handing out the cups. We're just more afraid of staying on one planet forever. The council scientists accepted the coffee with surprise. They were not used to senior researchers bringing drinks to others. This was another strange human thing they had to understand. But the risks, the older scientist started to say. Everything has risks, Yu Jin interrupted. She pulled up a new diagram on the big screen. That's why we build backup systems. Look at this new safety circuit. If the quantum field starts to fail, it can snap the ship back home instantly. The council scientists studied the diagram. Slowly, their faces changed from worry to interest. This is quite clever, one said finally. We never thought of using the snap effect as a safety measure. That's because you see it as dangerous, Jaiwan explained. We see it as a tool. Like fire. Dangerous, yes, but useful if you respect it and control it properly. Just then, Mai Suk Kang burst into the lab. The test ship is ready for another jump, she announced. This time we're going to try for Mars. The council scientists looked alarmed. Mars? That is 5 times further than your moon test. Yes, Jaiwan said, standing up. And tomorrow we might try for Jupiter. The week after that, maybe Alpha Centauri. We learn by doing. As they walked to the test chamber, Sang-Min fell into step beside Jaiwan. The council observers are starting to understand, he said quietly. They're asking how things work now, not just telling us what we can't do. Jaiwan nodded. They've been doing things the same way for so long, they forgot there might be other ways. She looked at her team preparing the test ship. Humans are good at finding other ways. The council scientists watched as the human team ran their pre-jump checks. Everything was careful, professional, and safe. But there was also excitement in the air. The humans treated each test like an adventure. Perhaps, one council scientist whispered to another, we have become too careful over the years. We have forgotten the joy of discovery. The test ship vanished with its familiar thunderclap sound. Seconds later, it returned with data and pictures from Mars. The humans celebrated with high fives and cheers. Even some of the council scientists found themselves smiling. Later that day, Suho Kim sent his report to the council. The humans continue to surprise us, he wrote. But perhaps we needed to be surprised. They are teaching us that there is always more to learn, even for those who think they know everything. The emergency alert came at midnight, Seoul time. Dr. Jaiwan Park was still in her laboratory when the council's emergency broadcast filled every screen. Attention all council worlds. The message read, mining colony on Kepler 186, experiencing catastrophic reactor failure. Immediate evacuation required. 8,000 lives at risk. Nearest council rescue ships are 3 days away at maximum speed. Jaiwan looked at the coordinates. Kepler 186f was 12 light-years from Earth. The Council's fastest ships would take 3 days to reach it. 3 days too late. She pressed the emergency call button. Within minutes, her team arrived at the laboratory. They had all seen the message. Our new ship isn't fully tested yet, Mai Suk Kang said, looking at the prototype they had been building. It was larger than their test ship, designed to carry people instead of just sensors. How long until the colony's reactor fails? Sang Min Lee asked. Soo-ho Kim, who had just rushed into the lab, answered. 6 hours, maybe less. He looked at the human ship. The council wants to know if your quantum drive could reach the colony in time. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at Captain Hai-Jin Park, the test pilot who had volunteered to fly the new ship. She stood next to the prototype, her hand touching its metal surface. The quantum stabilizer is ready, Yu Jin Shin reported, checking her instruments. We've tested it at this size in simulations, but not with actual jumps, one of the council scientists pointed out. This would be the first real test, and at such a distance. How many children are in the colony? Hai-Jin asked suddenly. Soo-ho checked his datapad. 912, he said quietly. Hai-Jin nodded. Then we're going. Dr. Park, please tell me this ship is ready to fly. Jaiwan looked at her team. They all nodded. The ship is ready, she said, but the council needs to approve the mission. There is no time for formal approval, Soo-ho said. He straightened his tie and took a deep breath. As the council's representative on Earth, I take full responsibility. Save those people if you can. The next hour was a blur of activity. The team loaded emergency supplies into the ship. Engineers ran final checks on the quantum stabilizer ring. Council scientists helped, their earlier fears forgotten in the face of the emergency. The quantum field is stable, Mai Suk reported. All systems are green. Captain Hai-Jin sat in the pilot's seat, running through her checklist. 2 emergency medical workers sat behind her, ready to help the colonists. Remember, Jaiwan said through the radio, the snapback system will bring you home automatically if anything goes wrong. Don't try to fix problems. Just come back. Understood, Hai-Jin replied. Starting quantum entanglement process. The blue glow of the stabilizer ring grew brighter. The air around the ship shimmered as space itself prepared to stretch. Target locked. Kepler 186th colony, Sang-min announced. Distance, 12.3 light-years. In all the years of Council space travel, no ship had ever attempted such a long jump in one go. Their careful, safe method required multiple shorter jumps. Quantum field at full power, Yu Jin reported. Ready for snap sequence. Captain Hai-Jin took a deep breath. For the children, she said quietly. Then louder. Initiating snap sequence. The thunderclap was louder than ever before. The ship vanished, leaving behind a room full of nervous humans and terrified council members. Now we wait, Jaiwan said, watching the clock, and hope our math was right. Soo-ho stood next to her, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Today, he said, we will either save 8,000 lives or learn why the council's careful approach was right all along. The clock ticked. The fate of thousands hung on a rubber band made of space itself and the courage of those willing to snap it. 5 minutes passed in the Seoul laboratory. Then 10. No one spoke. They all watched the clock and the emergency broadcast screens, waiting for news. Dr. Jaiwan Park stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the quantum field monitors. They showed that the ship's stabilizer was still active, still working, but at such a great distance, they couldn't receive any other data. Suddenly, all the screens lit up with a new message from the colony. Unknown ship has appeared at Kepler 186f. The message read, using unregistered drive technology. Ship is approaching colony. They made it, Sang-min Lee whispered. The quantum snap worked at light-year distances. More messages appeared quickly. The human ship had landed. Captain Hai-Jin Park and the medical team were helping evacuate the colonists. The colony's reactor was reaching critical levels. Sik Cho, the council's chief scientist, had arrived during the emergency. He watched the screens with growing amazement. They covered 12 light-years in less than 10 seconds, he said. Our fastest ships would take 3 days to travel that far. The next hour was filled with tense updates. The evacuation continued. The human ship made multiple short jumps, carrying groups of colonists to a nearby safe station. Each jump took only seconds. Quantum stabilizer is holding steady, Mai Suk Kang reported, checking the readings. The snapback system hasn't activated once. The ship is performing perfectly. Then came the message everyone had been waiting for. Final group evacuated. Colony completely cleared. All 8,000 residents safe. The laboratory erupted in cheers. Human scientists hugged council members. Someone opened a bottle of champagne. In the excitement, no one cared about proper protocol anymore. Wait, Suho Kim called out. There's more. The final message from Captain Hai-jin appeared on the screens. Mission complete. Colony reactor contained. Preparing for return jump to Earth. 3 minutes later, the familiar thunderclap shook the laboratory. The ship appeared exactly where it had started, its quantum stabilizer rings still glowing bright blue. Captain Hai-jin stepped out, looking tired but happy. The quantum drive worked perfectly, she reported. No problems with any of the jumps. The colonists are all safe. Won Sik Cho approached the ship slowly. He placed his hand on the stabilizer ring, feeling its gentle hum. In one day, he said, this ship has saved more lives than any council vessel in history, and it did it by breaking every rule we thought was unbreakable. He turned to face Jai-won and her team. The council was wrong, he admitted. Your method isn't just possible. It's better than ours. Faster, more efficient, and just as safe, though in a very different way. Suho Kim was already sending reports to the council. They want to begin immediate cooperation, he announced. Full sharing of technology. They're calling it the start of a new era in space travel. Jai-won looked at her team, the engineers, scientists, and brave pilot who had made it all possible. We didn't do this to prove anyone wrong, she said. We did it because we knew it would work. Because humans don't let fear of the impossible stop us from trying. Won Sik nodded slowly. That is what we need to learn from you, he said. Not just the technology, but the spirit behind it. The courage to try new things. As the celebrations continued, Jai-won walked to her computer and opened a new file. What are you working on now? Sang-min asked. Something new, she replied, smiling. I have some ideas about quantum communications that might surprise our council friends. Won Sik, overhearing this, laughed softly. Of course you do, he said. I suppose we should prepare ourselves for more impossible things from humans. Nothing is impossible, Jai-won reminded him. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet. 1 month after the Kepler 186 rescue, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council looked very different. Human scientists sat among the council members. Engineers from both species worked together at new consoles. And at the center of it all stood Jae-yun Kim, the newly appointed Human Affairs Liaison. The integration of human quantum drive technology has begun, Jae-yun announced to the chamber. 5 council ships have been fitted with quantum stabilizer rings. 10 more are being modified now. Elder Du-Yan Kwan smiled from his seat. And how are the council crews adapting to the new drive? They were nervous at first, Jae-yun admitted. But after seeing how well the safety systems work, they're becoming more comfortable. Some even say they prefer it to the old method. The chamber filled with quiet talk. A year ago, no one would have believed this possible. Now, ships using human quantum drives were making jumps that once took days in just minutes. At the Seoul Institute of Science, Dr. Ji-won Park and her team had grown. Council scientists worked at desks next to human engineers. They learned from each other, combining the careful precision of council science with human creativity. Dr. Park called Won Sik Cho from his workstation. Could you look at these readings? We're seeing something interesting in the quantum field. Jae-won walked over. On Won Sik's screen, Waves of energy moved in strange patterns. "The quantum field is resonating," she said, "almost like it's singing." "Yes," 1-6 said excitedly. "We think the field might be able to carry more than just ships, if we adjust the frequency. We could send messages through quantum space," Jai-1 finished. "Instant communication across any distance." This was how it worked now. Council scientists brought their deep knowledge of physics. Humans brought their wild ideas and willingness to try new things. Together, they made discoveries neither group could have made alone. In orbit above Earth, Captain Hai-Jin Park prepared for another test flight. Her ship now carried both human and Council crew members. The quantum stabilizer ring glowed with a newer, more efficient design. "Ready for jump to Alpha Centauri," she announced. Her Council co-pilot, who had once feared the quantum drive, now monitored it with confidence. "Quantum field stable," he reported. "Safety systems green. Ready when you are, Captain." The ship disappeared with its thunderclap sound. Seconds later, it appeared near Alpha Centauri. What had once seemed impossible was now routine. Back in the Council chamber, Jai-1 finished her report. "The human quantum drive program has achieved a perfect safety record. Not a single failure. Not one accident. Because we learned from each other," Elder Du Yen said. "The Council taught humans about careful testing and safety protocols. Humans taught us about innovation and courage." "And now," asked one Council member, "what impossible thing will humans try next?" Jai-1 smiled. "Dr. Park's team is already working on something new. They think they can use quantum fields to study other dimensions." The Council scientists said it was impossible, of course. But they said that about the quantum drive too. The chamber filled with laughter. They had learned their lesson about telling humans something was impossible. In her laboratory, Jai-1 looked at her newest equations. Next to her, Sang-Min checked calculations while Council scientists offered suggestions. On the wall hung a picture of their first test ship, now in a museum. "Do you ever miss the old days?" Sang-Min asked. "When it was just us, trying to prove everyone wrong." Jai-1 looked around at her mixed team of humans and Council members, all working together to push the boundaries of science. "No," she said. "This is better. We're not proving anyone wrong anymore. We're proving everyone right." Above them, ships carrying beings from 100 worlds jumped through space on quantum rubber bands, their crews no longer afraid of the impossible. A new age of exploration had begun, born from the moment humanity decided to do things differently.